Okay, well, welcome to the first Bible for You podcast. I'm Peter Lynch, and in the Bible for You podcast, every episode I'll be joined by someone who will be discussing a Bible chapter with me. Now, some of these I'll be picking the chapter, and in some of these podcasts, our guest will be picking the chapter. So for our first episode, I'm being joined by David Cleroux, and I'm very thankful he agreed to do this. I picked the first chapter that we'll be discussing, and I'm already looking forward to whatever David's going to pick. If we do this again, I'm sure he'll have something really interesting to present that we will study and then talk about. So for our first podcast, David, could you tell what we're going to be talking about?
Yes, we're going to be talking about John chapter 9, where Jesus heals the man who was born blind. We'll comment on it as we go along, I believe. And so we hope you really enjoy this.
Yeah, so we're going to do a read-through, and we'll be commenting as we read. If you'd like to read this chapter through yourself before listening further, then please pause and read through John chapter 9. But we will also be doing our read-through right here as we discuss it. We're using, I have the King James Version. What version do you have?
I also have the King James Version.
Okay, so we're both using the same version here, the King James Version. I'm going to get us started here, so please interject at any time, anything you want to bring up.
Thank you.
This chapter, I've been thinking about it for years. I forget at what point this chapter really became alive to me, but it's kind of haunted me for years. There's so much in it, and it's really stood out to me. I've read it scores of times, and I've really been wanting to do some kind of commentary on it. So that's why this was my first pick. John chapter 9. And as Jesus passed by, he saw a man which was blind from his birth. And his disciples asked him, saying, Master, who did sin, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? Jesus answered, Neither hath this man sinned, nor his parents, but that the works of God should be made manifest in him. So that's something that gets talked about a lot, of course. The question of, was it because of someone's sins that he was born blind? And of course, Jesus' answer wasn't because of sin. And what we're starting to see here, something that really stands out to me about this chapter, it's the amazing respect between Jesus and this blind man. You know, we're already right off the bat, Jesus is telling his disciples how special this guy is. He says, this man hasn't sinned, neither have his parents, but this is so that the works of God should be made manifest in him. And, of course, a secular opinion would be, how could God do that? How could God make someone blind, just so that he can do a good work with him? There's something that really stood out to me is that's a very similar situation to what Jesus himself is going through. Jesus is also going to live this kind of difficult, tragic life for the glory of God. And so if it's okay if God incarnate can do that, it's not a bad thing for this other man to also be going through a similar thing. I'm going to continue unless you have anything to add there.
Well, yeah, I think they may be going by the Pentateuch, the first 5 books of the Bible, where God says, he's talking about idol worship, and he says, Thou shalt not bow down thyself to them, nor serve them. For I, the Lord thy God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children unto the 3rd and 4th generation. And it goes on to say, of them that hate me. So this curse upon the people is because they hate God themselves. And they're bringing the curse upon themselves because God is not definitely, he's a definitely loving God, as Jesus proves right here,
Yeah.
in healing this blind man for the glory of God.
Yeah.
So I think the Pharisees here, because they go on toward the end of the chapter, and they say, "Thou wast altogether born in iniquity," and are you trying to tell us what's right and wrong?
Yeah.
So I think they're going by the Old Testament.
So his disciples here are going by that, because that's his disciples who ask him.
Yes, also his disciples were
So
programmed.
it seems to be that's how everyone thought.
In those days,
In
yes.
those days.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And Jesus, he's saying something pretty new here, because that's not something out of the law or out of the Old Testament, that God would make someone with a disability for the works of God to be made manifest in him. But that seems to be what Jesus is saying here, right?
That's right. Yeah, he was meant to be blind until Jesus came at that appropriate time frame in life, and it was for a special purpose, and it was to help it goes on to say, to help those who were blind spiritually and physically, that they may see.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm going to continue here. Verse 4, Jesus says, "I must work the works of him that sent me while it is day. The night cometh when no man can work. As long as I am in the world, I am the light of the world." This is so typical of the book of John. Jesus just says these astonishing things that I don't even really have much of an opinion on what he said there. I can't talk very much about, oh, Jesus is saying this because of this and because of this. Maybe you have some thoughts on this, but there are so many lines like that in the book of John where Jesus just says these unbelievable things that basically you'd have to be God to say those kinds of things. And that's the when people used to comment, "Oh wow, Jesus talks with authority, he does things with authority," this is, I think, a really good example of that. So one thing that comes to mind about this verse about Jesus saying, "I am the light of the world," that's a real self-awareness. He knowing who he is, knowing what his mission on the earth is as the light of the world. And we hear about this in Luke chapter 2, when Simeon the prophet in the temple prophesies over Jesus, and he says, "Lord, now lettest thou thy servant depart in peace according to thy word, for mine eyes have seen thy salvation, which thou hast prepared before the face of all people, a light to lighten the Gentiles and the glory of thy people Israel." So there's this theme of Jesus and light, Jesus and enlightenment, Jesus and making blind people well. It's metaphorical, and it's also just really physical, just really realistic, literally making blind people see. And he did a lot of that, of course. "When he had thus spoken, he spat on the ground and made clay of the spittle. And he anointed the eyes of the blind man with clay, and said, Go, wash in the pool of Siloam, which is by interpretation sent. He went his way therefore, and washed, and came seeing. The neighbors therefore, and they which had seen him, that he was blind, said, Is not this he that sat and begged? Some said, This is he. Others said, He is like him. But he said, I am he. Therefore said they unto him, How were thine eyes opened? He answered and said, A man that is called Jesus made clay, and anointed mine eyes, and said unto me, Go to the pool of Siloam, and wash. And I went and washed, and I received sight. Then said they unto him, Where is he? He said, I know not. They brought to the Pharisees him that aforetime was blind, and it was the Sabbath day when Jesus made the clay and opened his eyes.
Actually, so he gets, Jesus anoints his eyes. He goes to the pool. He washes, and all of a sudden he can see. and he's walking back home, and the neighbors see him and they say, "Whoa, what are you doing? My goodness!" And he says, "What happened to you?" And he says, "Well, this man, anointed my eyes and said, 'Go wash,' and here I am. I can see now." And so they said, "Well, where is he?"
Yeah.
I want to go to see him. So he says, "Well, I don't know where he is. He told me to do this." And so they said, "Well, come on. Let's go to the Pharisees and see what they have to say about this."
Yeah. Yeah. And
people.
now, of course, it happened on the Sabbath, and Jesus does this more than once. He does good on the Sabbath because he is the Lord of the Sabbath, and
yes.
It's really neat because he is the fulfillment of the law, of course. So when he does something, it's lawful.
Right.
But we're going to see this chapter really brings out the conflict he has with other people who want to interpret the law.
That's right.
So they bring him to the Pharisees. Then again, the Pharisees also asked him how he had received his sight. He said unto them, He put clay upon mine eyes, and I washed, and do see. Therefore said some of the Pharisees, This man is not of God, because he keepeth not the Sabbath day.
Whoa. That's so interesting. It's quite amazing. Here the man is totally healed from being blind, and they said, "Well, you know what? This man who healed you can't be of God because he doesn't keep the Sabbath day."
Yeah,
and
that's the first thing they come up with. The first thing.
Right, you're not allowed to heal on the Sabbath day.
Yeah.
And Jesus, in other places, he says, "Well, if you had a cow or an ox or a donkey, and it was stuck in the mud, wouldn't you pull them out on the Sabbath day?"
Mm-hmm.
And how much is it better to open the eyes of a blind man?
Yeah.
But here, I think what Jesus is doing, and what this man does a little further on in the chapter, is Jesus is trying to get them to see their self-righteous attitude, because that's about the only thing that stands in the way of admitting that we're sinners and we all need salvation, is our self-righteousness. So here... Yeah.
It's a temptation to want to be the one who knows. Right, like you kind of want to, I guess it's a lust for power. Like you want to be the one who lets people in on the whatever's real or not. You want to be the one who decides. You want to be the one who teaches. You want to be the one to
know it all.
Yeah. It's just like this very simple flaw that we have, and then in the wrong situation, that flaw becomes so dangerous to the point of, maybe you reject the Son of God,
Right.
because you give into that flaw, or that flaw becomes a major sin,
That's right, because we become judgmental.
Yeah.
And so they're judging according to the law here, but
yeah. And so is Jesus. And it's neat here. It says that, and this you see us a lot in John and the other Gospels too. So some of the Pharisees say, "How can a man that is a sinner do such miracles?" And there was a division among them. So some people get past that and they start to see things the right way. Some of them get stuck on wanting to be in charge of who keeps the law and who doesn't. So I had to bring up this also from Mark 3. We have a really similar thing when Jesus heals the man with the withered hand in the synagogue. Very similar situation. Sabbath day, he's in the synagogue, he's teaching, and then he entered again to the synagogue. There's a man there which had a withered hand, and they watched him whether he would heal him on the Sabbath day, that they might accuse him. That's so sad. One of these people all lived close together. They all knew each other. So this community is in a synagogue, and this man wants to be healed because he obeys Jesus and he gets healed, but his neighbors are all watching him with negative interest. They're like looking for something to accuse Jesus of. And it says about Jesus, when he looked around on them with anger, being grieved for the hardness of their hearts, he saith to the man, stretch forth thine hand. And he stretched it out, and his hand was restored whole as the other. This guy wanted to be healed, and Jesus wanted to heal him. And unfortunately, a lot of the people around were just interested in an excuse to accuse Jesus of breaking the law. And
that's right.
That's so amazing. And the gospel, it really is a sword. You take this into your own life and see, wow, where do I do this? What would I do in that situation? And I can't always say that I would be making the right choice and everything, because I know my own self-righteous problems, and if I was in that room with Jesus, what would I be thinking? If I saw Jesus talking to the bad people, what would I think? Maybe I would be the one saying, oh, doesn't your master know that he eats with sinners? Or would I be the one saying, oh, how can he do this on the Sabbath day? It's a really heavy thing. The gospel, it's such a sword.
That's right. Yeah, it's like love supersedes the law.
Yeah.
Whatever's done in love for others, there's no law against that. So they were trying to hold the law against Jesus here.
Yeah.
But Jesus was just saw the hardness of their hearts and said it's better just to be loving and caring. Doesn't matter which day you do it on.
Right.
And because actually he was trying to help them understand that their self-righteous attitude was keeping them from being part of the heart of God. God's heart is love. The Bible says that God is love.
Yeah.
God is a spirit. God is love. And they that worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth. So that's what Jesus was getting at here.
Verse 17, they say unto the blind man again, what sayest thou of him, that he hath opened thine eyes? And he said, he is a prophet. But the Jews did not believe concerning him that he had been blind and received his sight, until they called the parents of him that had received his sight. So this is something that happens in John. It kind of, it seems that the scene is kind of jumping from one verse to the next without a lot of introduction. So they brought him to the Pharisees, but then they're not, and it seems they've already discussed, that Jesus did this, but then it seems to jump to maybe a different scene, or maybe some different people come in or something, or maybe this is another conversation they had a little later. It says the Jews did not believe concerning him that he had been blind and received his sight, until they called the parents of him that had received his sight. And they asked him, saying, is this your son, who ye say was born blind? How then doth he now see? His parents answered them and said, we know that this is our son, and that he was born blind. But by what means he now seeth, we know not, or who hath opened his eyes, we know not. He is of age, ask him, he will speak for himself. So there's this whole conversation is really interesting. The blind man, they ask him, who was he? What do you say about him? And he answers right back, he is a prophet. And right. you the more you go through this chapter, you find out, how deep this guy is. Like, he has an answer for everything, and a correct answer for everything.
Right. So he was on his way home, actually. He didn't even make it home because actually his neighbors met him. Right. And Trump wanted to find out about how he got healed. Yeah. And then they thought, this is a miracle. Well, let's take him to the Pharisees and find out what the Pharisees have to, the religious people have to say about this. And so they get there, and the Pharisees say, well, we don't believe this. Because it's a Sabbath day, you could not have possibly been healed, because this is the day that we're supposed to rest, right? And so they say, well, go get your, or bring his parents. We want to talk to them because we don't believe you got healed.
Yeah.
You were just faking it.
So now they're questioning if he was even blind.
That's right. That's right. And
so that makes me wonder, like maybe after they talked with the neighbors and the local Pharisees, maybe now they've gone to some people who didn't even know him. It sounds like these people didn't even know who this guy was because they're questioning if he was even blind.
Right. Well, it was probably, I was wondering about that too, if there's a special place where they interview people. Because I know with Jesus, they didn't bring him to the temple, they brought him to a certain place where they judged him openly, among other Pharisees. And so there must have been a certain place where they did that. And there are probably several Pharisees, and they're all saying, well, this is not possible.
Mm-hmm.
And so his parents come and say, yeah, this is our son. Yeah, he was born blind, but we don't know what happened to him.
Yeah.
Because they knew the Pharisees were already against Jesus.
Yeah.
So they said, ask him. We don't have anything to do with this.
Yeah. So it says here, these words spake his parents because they feared the Jews, for the Jews had agreed already that if any man did confess that he was Christ, he should be put out of the synagogue. Okay, so therefore, said his parents, he is of age, ask him. Yeah, that's what you were just saying. How it's really, really unfortunate. That's a theme in this is the fear people have of the people in charge. There's this disconnect between the Pharisees or the rulers of the temple, and the common people. There's this very unhealthy relation between the two.
Right.
Very different from the relation that Jesus has with people, where he's just such a righteous judge. He can be tough on people. We're going to see and hear how tough he can get with people, but there's this authority and love and this real goodness that goes along with it. Like, people want Jesus to be around. They want to get close to Jesus, and he accepts them. He wants people to come to him. Mm-hmm. These guys are not really like that.
Right, and that's why there was this division among them. They say because of him, because of Jesus. Well, yeah, because it was like love against the law. There was that division because of humility and self-righteousness.
Yeah.
Jesus just he was fulfilling a purpose, and that man had been blind all his life. Jesus knew he was supposed to heal him.
Yeah. And
God had a purpose in it, and he was just fulfilling God's will.
Yeah.
And the Pharisees stood up against it. But what God was really trying to do was like Jesus said, a new commandment I give unto you, that you love one another. So when Jesus died on the cross, the Old Testament laws were put to an end,
mm-hmm.
right? And the New Testament law was to love, to be loving. And Jesus said, by this shall all men know that you're my disciples, if you have love one to another. So he was trying to bring about that compassion, which the Pharisees undoubtedly couldn't understand. They weren't seeing it properly here.
Yeah. Okay, verse 24. Then again called they the man that was blind, and said unto him, Give God the praise. We know that this man is a sinner. That's really interesting. That's really typical of how a political trial. Like, we just want you to say the right things. We don't want to punish you. We just want you to profess our belief system is. We just want a public statement from you, like a public denial of this naughty thing that you were thinking or saying. That's all we want. They just want, whoever it was who was causing a bit of a stir. They just want him to publicly acknowledge that Jesus is a sinner here, and they give him it's really easy out for him. All he has to do is give God the praise. That's easy to do. And then they add, we know that this man is a sinner, and he's not gonna stand for that. So he answers them and says, verse 25, he answered and said, whether he be a sinner or no, I know not. One thing I know, that whereas I was blind, now we see. And so he comes back to that, because they couldn't even acknowledge that that this wonderful thing had happened to him. And so he brings it up, and that gets the whole argument going again. Then said they to him again, what did he to thee? How opened he thine eyes? So they can't let it go. It's really funny. He answered them, I have told you already, and ye did not hear. Wherefore would ye hear it again? Will ye also be his disciples? Then they reviled him, and said, thou art his disciple, but we are Moses' disciples. And the truth is, as Jesus points out to them in other places, they aren't even Moses' disciples. If they were really Moses' disciples, they would have recognized what Jesus was doing. They would have actually known the law, and they would have seen that Jesus was Jesus was the most lawful person. He did the most lawful things, and if they were Moses' disciples, they would have known that. And the blind man, just everything he says exposes some kind of lie that his enemies are living, and it just gets them more and more frustrated. You can either let go of the lie and move on, or the longer you hold on to that lie, just the more angry you get, and that's what's happening here. So they say, then they reviled him, and said, thou art his disciple, but we are Moses' disciple. We know that God spake unto Moses. As for this fellow, we know not from whence he is. Yeah, isn't that true? They do not know where he's from, and that's a really significant thing there. Where's Jesus from? Jesus is from God, and they don't.
That's right. They didn't understand. Actually, further on in the Gospels, where they approach him with that again,
mm-hmm.
Well, they're thinking that they're saying that, well, there's no prophet that comes out of Nazareth.
Mm-hmm.
But Jesus was born in Bethlehem,
right?
And his mother and father were of the lineage of the tribe of Judah, which is the tribe of the kings, and so Jesus was lawfully in line to be the Son of God.
Wow!
But they didn't research it. They didn't know.
Lawfully in line to be the king.
Yes,
of Israel.
The king of Israel, but he was the spiritual king, exactly.
Wow. Verse 30, the blind man continues, the man answered and said unto them, why, herein is a marvelous thing, that ye know not from whence he is, and yet he hath opened mine eyes. That's such a powerful thing that he says to them there. Something wonderful happened to him. These guys don't even care. They're not even interested in the fact that he got his eyesight back. They don't know how it happened, and all they want to do is argue with him about it, because their whole claim to being in charge apparently is based on a lie, and he just calls them out right there, because he received the blessing of God there, and they can't even accept it, much less explain it. Well, because they can't accept what actually happened, therefore their whole way of thinking can't explain it, of course, because they're omitting the actual truth. They're denying the truth, therefore they can't explain why this guy is able to see again. And
well, exactly.
And he just hits them with that fact right there.
Yeah, because they're trying to say, well, Jesus is a sinner, and the blind man knows, well, you can't be a sinner and heal someone's eyes.
Yeah, he's very practical. He just goes, this plus this, it has to be this. Yes. And they're all saying that they're denying the 2 plus 2, and then their whole thing collapses. They don't have any answers.
Right. And the thing is, I think it's God's mercy again. It's this man is trying to, as simple as he is, he's trying to get the truth across.
Yeah.
And they're just rejecting the truth, because in 31 it says, "And now we know that God heareth not sinners, but if any man be a worshipper of God and doeth his will, him he heareth." So how can you say he's a sinner? How can you say he's not of God?
Yeah.
That's what he's trying to get across.
He's so wise in the Word.
Yeah.
Like he really has this stuff. He has it figured out in a very simple, practical way. And he's teaching these guys. He's teaching them.
The Pharisees, yeah.
Yeah. The blind man is teaching the Pharisees. And again, it's so sad that they can't even be happy for him. Like there's no there's no joy around this thing. And imagine how it feels for him. I kind of sense that when he's saying this, not from whence he is, and yet he hath opened mine eyes. Like that's something that's so important to him. And they're just arguing with him about it, and it's so sad, like it's like, hey, this is special, this is special.
I like the fact that he mocks him a little bit and says, "Well, do you want to be his disciple?"
Yeah. Do you want to? Yeah. But that's a powerful question. I mean, that's giving them the chance,
Well, yeah.
That's giving and we know a lot of Pharisees did become Jesus' disciples.
Yeah.
So it's not an irrelevant question. And of course, these guys flood the answer. They
Absolutely.
So he continues, verse 32. Since the world began, was it not heard that any man opened the eyes of one that was born blind? If this man were not of God, he could do nothing. So you see how aware he has been of what he's been going through in his life. So he's definitely been thinking about that before he got healed. He thought about no one who was blind was ever healed, and he probably thought that meant he was never going to be healed. He obviously knows this little fact, I guess, because never in the Jewish stories or the Old Testament was there a man being healed from being blind, and he was painfully aware of that, and that just made this what happened so much more powerful, because he's a very knowledgeable man. He has enough knowledge of the law and of the history to recognize Jesus as being good, to recognize the situation he was in, and he knows this bit about how no one had ever been healed of being blind before. His conclusion, if this man were not of God, he could do nothing. They answered and said unto him, Thou wast altogether born in sins, and dost thou teach us? And they cast him out.
Right.
It's so sad. It's so sad.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. So they had that prejudice, that thought about him being a sinner himself. You're born in sin, and you're trying to teach us out.
Because clearly he was teaching them, and they even say here, do you teach us? And they recognize it, because everything he's saying here is right, and they have no answer. They're given into their sinful human nature, and they can't accept this teaching, so they just revile him, and they cast him out.
Yeah, it's a very condescending attitude, isn't it?
Yeah.
So it's very self-righteous.
And I think it's defensive from their part.
Right.
Like, are they going to let this? I mean, imagine. So if this went the other way, imagine if it said, and then the Pharisees thanked him for teaching them. Imagine what? How could they have responded the right way? And they could have. Everyone has a choice, but it's so hard. I mean, if you're reading this thing for the first time, you're not going to expect these guys to end up making the right choice, because we know how hard it is to do that, how easy it is to have a hard heart, and how inhuman and how godly it is to have a soft and open heart. And that's why it makes sense that these guys did what they did, because that's, unfortunately it makes sense, because most people in that situation wouldn't have the humility to make the right choice, or at least these guys didn't, unfortunately. And they cast him out. Jesus heard that they had cast him out. And when he had found him, he said unto him, Dost thou believe on the Son of God? Now Jesus comes back into the story again. He's in at the beginning. Now he's back in it again. And this is the first interaction. It's just so neat how Jesus finds this guy, in this difficulty he's going through, because he really he suffered for Jesus. Right. He this argument he has with the Pharisees is reminiscent of what some of the apostles did, in the book of Acts, like Stephen and them, when they're having these, back and forth, really arguing for the sake of Christ. And this guy's doing it, and he knows nothing about Jesus the Christ, but he already went through all this for the sake of Jesus. So he says, Dost thou believe on the Son of God? He answered and said, Who is he, Lord, that I might believe on him? And he's so open, just anything Jesus says, he wants it.
Well, he obviously saw that the truth wasn't on the other side.
Yeah.
It wasn't with the Sanhedrin.
Right. And Jesus said unto him, Thou hast both seen him, and it is he that talketh with thee. And now, I'm not sure, how the chronology works, but that's got to be one of the first times that Jesus tells someone, I am the Son of God.
Yes.
I'd have to look that up, but that's such a privilege that this guy gets. Yes. This one-on-one with Jesus, and Jesus revealing himself to him. And he said, Lord, I believe. And he worshipped him.
That reminds me of this picture. I'm not sure if you would remember it, Peter, but there's a picture of Jesus, and this man he's almost in tears, and he's holding on to Jesus's legs, and it's like he's worshiping Jesus right there. This verse reminds me of that. Yeah,
well, I don't know that picture, but that is the image that is the mental picture I get from this, that they're in some public area, maybe in a street, and this guy just falls down
and
at Jesus' feet right there, and he doesn't say anything, he just worships him. And then Jesus does the talking. So it has this reference here, Mark 9:24. I just wanted to go and see what that is. Okay, so this is Jesus heals a child, and straightway the father of the child cried out and said with tears, Lord, I believe, help thou mine unbelief. So, Lord, I believe. And Jesus said, For judgment I am come into this world, that they which see not might see, and that they which see might be made blind. Again, here's Jesus saying the most incredible things, amazing things. I'm sure you could go on about that, learn from that so much. I'm sure there's, so much truth. I don't even really know what to make of that. What do you have any comments on that?
Yeah, well, when Jesus said that I am the light of the world, and now he's saying I've come for judgment.
Yes.
He's judging what's right and what's wrong.
Yes.
He's helping everyone to see what is right and to go along with the truth, and help, bring reality to the people, because they were so caught up in so many superstitions and things in the temple, and they were so lost in their self-righteousness.
Yeah.
He was just trying to say this is right and this is wrong, but everyone. It's like that quote that says, "A man convinced against his will is of the same opinion still." It's like everyone has to learn and admit their mistakes and come to the light and accept the truth. So you can't really legislate righteousness. You can't say this is right and this is wrong. He's trying to help everyone to see what is right and wrong, and
through him.
That's right. Through his judgments.
Wow.
Through what he does.
Wow.
So he healed a man on the Sabbath day, and they had to make their own decision whether that was a legal thing to do, a good thing to do, or a bad thing to do. And they chose, well, this man's a sinner. No, it's a Sabbath day. He can't do that.
Right.
We keep the law. We're good. He's
Right.
bad. So they were condemning their own selves.
Wow. Yeah. So through their reaction to what Jesus does, they are being judged, or they are being justified, or like it says in this book of John, this is condemnation. Light has come into the world, and men chose darkness rather than light.
That's right.
Because their deeds of evil. But everyone who, let's see what it says there. Whoever doeth good,
the light cometh to the light.
But he that doeth truth cometh to the light, that his deeds may be manifest, that they are wrought in God.
That's right.
So it's like everything. Jesus is the judge. He's also, I guess, all these other illustrations, the cornerstone. He is the word, the law, and how things react to him is how they are judged.
That's right. We know what's true or false by the standard of God's word.
So I'm going to continue. Verse 40. And some of the Pharisees which were with him heard these words, and said unto him, Are we blind also? Jesus said unto them, If ye were blind, ye should have no sin. But now ye say, We see. Therefore your sin remaineth. Jesus is tough on the Pharisees. Mostly in the book of John, I think there's so many conversations where it sounds like the Pharisees are like kind of opening up to Jesus, or they're with Jesus, they like him, it seems, or at least going around with him and talking with him. Sometimes they even say some complimentary things to him, but Jesus practices some very tough love with these guys, and here's another example of that. Like it sounds like a very it sounds like an innocent question, So Jesus has talked about they that which see might be made blind. Some of the Pharisees who were with him heard and said, Are we blind also? And Jesus said, If you were blind, you should have no sin. But now you say, We see, therefore your sin remaineth. He's really kind of tough. What do you think about what he's saying there? Why do you think he's hitting them with that?
He's being very honest. He's being truthful. I believe that everything that Jesus did was to help people to understand. So if people were being tough with him, he knew that he had to stand up and be tough so that they would understand. He wasn't going to be pushed around because he was the truth. He was the light. And so he's saying to them, well, your sin remaineth, because you say, you're looking at me and you say you don't need the light. You don't need the truth. Because you already have what you believe is the truth. So.
Right.
So you're still walking in darkness.
Yeah.
You haven't received the light yet.
Yeah. And imagine if Jesus didn't say these kinds of things to the Pharisees. They wouldn't have had the chance to
learn.
To learn.
That's right.
So and John, the book of John is full of this. Jesus saying these really tough, harsh things to. I guess Matthew, they all have it. All the Gospels have he reserves like his toughest lines for the Pharisees or for the different Jewish religious elders, or the scribes also. These are good people, and a lot of them were attracted to Jesus, and he really just lays some of his harshest lines, some of his toughest disciplinary words on them, and like this. But if he didn't tell them that, then imagine a lot of these guys ended up becoming the early church. A lot of these people who are always following Jesus around, talking with him. Remember, Paul was a Pharisee in this time. We don't know if he ever saw Jesus, but he was a Pharisee during the time that Jesus was on earth. And like he said, while we were yet sinners, like while I and others were sinners, Christ died for us. So when you think about Jesus hitting the Pharisees with these tough things, imagine Paul was a Pharisee, and of course Jesus has his own one-on-one with Paul on the road to Damascus, where he knocks him down and makes him blind.
Yeah.
Interestingly, makes this Pharisee Saul blind so that he can, come to Jesus.
That's right. Well, I think you're right. I think Paul was more of an agnostic, that he didn't see Jesus, so he didn't see the truth. He didn't really know, but he was very zealous for the truth.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why Jesus had to really knock him and then show him the miracle of his restored sight.
Right.
So that he would
Yeah.
ultimately believe.
Yeah. And that's what he's doing all through the book of John, I think, with these guys. Or isn't it Matthew where he does a whole woe unto you scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites? He just dissects every bit of their sinfulness and really condemns them. Right. But then you do see, with the example of Paul at least, and I'm sure there were others, that there was fruit of that. It was a pruning. A lot of these guys did give up their sins and did come to righteousness through these very tough teachings that Jesus gave. It was definitely for a purpose.
Yes. Well, the first thing Paul did after he was healed was he started researching the scriptures to see about the Messiah and when he was coming. And if he knew Daniel 9, it says, from the going forth of the commandment to restore and to build Jerusalem unto the Messiah shall be a certain amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
If he had researched that, and he most likely had, because he was quite knowledgeable.
So he could have
known. Mm-hmm. He would have put that together and said,
yeah,
it's very possible. And then what did he do after that? He went to the disciples and said, tell me. Please.
Right, yes.
And the disciples said, we don't want anything to do with you because you're the guy that was persecuting us.
Yeah.
And he just insisted, I have to know about Jesus. Tell me what he said.
Yeah, yeah.
What did he say? And that's what he expounded on after that.
Yeah.
Was all the truth that he found through Jesus.
All right, so we've gotten to the end of the chapter, so we can go back to talk about anything in there. I mean, like we've spent a lot talking about it, a big theme of this is that whole was concluded here where Jesus says, "For judgment I've come into this world." This whole thing is a judgment on all the people involved. It's a judgment on the blind man. Is he going to accept Jesus? It's a judgment on everyone who hears about that story. How are they going to receive it? What are they going to do with it?
Yes, but it's also some people think of judgment like a court case where you're sentenced to death or you're sentenced to so much time in prison, something
Mm-hmm.
like that. But his judgments were a righteous judgment.
Yeah.
And the first judgment is when we are resurrected, we go to heaven. There is a judgment. It's called the marriage feast. And it's our reward. We get judged by what we've done for the Lord and where we stand with Jesus. And we get rewarded according to that. Our rewards in heaven.
Yeah.
And then there's a final judgment where all the wicked are judged.
Right.
The white throne judgment.
Right. But the only reason that they have to go there is because they wouldn't accept salvation.
That's right. Exactly.
Like these people who wouldn't accept Jesus, wouldn't accept that he was of God even. They didn't even want to, couldn't even celebrate this blind man being healed. They have to come up with something to get upset about.
Yes. Well, that's why it says to judge not according to appearances, but judge righteous judgment. And it goes back to Jesus. His judgments were out of love for others. He was trying to get the truth across to them. And being judgmental, we're trying to be loving and understanding and helping people to know what's true and false.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. I have a couple of some notes here that I wanted to read. big theme of this, I think, also, and of a lot of other of Jesus's miracles, is the liberality of God's goodness towards people. And so here, Jesus does this good thing, and then some people accept it, say this is wonderful. So some of the Pharisees said, there's a division among them. How can a man that is a sinner do such miracles? And some of them get upset about it, and the blind man is very happy and very just, he has this really beautiful reaction to everything that Jesus says and does. And that kind of how people react to God's liberalness is a really interesting topic. And he brings it up in this parable, the parable of the vineyard. The man who pays everybody, I'm going to give you a penny, he makes an agreement with them, and some people work the whole day, and every hour he goes out and he hires more laborers, and he said, I'm going to pay you for the day, this is how much I'm going to pay you. And at the end of the day, everyone comes and he gives each of them what he said he would give them. And whether they worked the whole day or whether they worked part of the day, he gives them each what he told them that he was going to give them, and it's the same amount for everyone. And some of the people in that story have a problem with that, and the owner of the vineyard, who I think is supposed to be Jesus, he's the judge in this story. He's the guy who's righteous in this story. And he said, "Is it not lawful for me to do what I will with mine own? Is thine eye evil because I am good?" He's teaching that God can be good and liberal to people, and none of us should question that. We shouldn't. We can't have it in our minds that how can God do this good thing for that person? Does he deserve it? Of course, we see a lot of the Pharisees had a problem when Jesus would go and spend time with sinners. Again, like, how could this person be good if he's going and he's giving to these sinners? Doesn't he know how bad these people are? But it's God, and God can be good, and he can share. God can give his abundance and his blessing to whoever he chooses. And I think that God chooses to give to everybody who wants it. Like the story of the vineyard, he goes out and he makes the offer, and whoever accepts it, they get that reward. Then there's a verse in. Oh, sorry, I'm talking a lot. You can cut in any time.
Right.
For something else also.
Well, it's kind of like where Peter comes to Jesus in John 21 and says, well, what about this man? What shall this man do?
Yes. Yeah.
And Jesus said, well, Peter, if I will that he tarry till I come, what is that to thee? He said, follow me.
Yeah.
Don't worry about what I'm doing. Just follow what I'm doing.
Yeah, God's going to be good to people however he wants to.
Yes.
And no one should don't even question it.
Right.
That like Peter didn't come and like criticize or anything. He just, I guess it's kind of like maybe Jesus detected a little bit of sinfulness in that question. Like he was kind of wanting to compare, or I don't know, or
yes.
But Jesus stops it right there and just says,
right.
What is that to thee? You follow me.
Yeah. Do as I do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because Jesus was, or the parable of the vineyard there, he was being very righteous because everybody needed help, right?
Yeah, everyone needed their wage.
He gave everybody a penny.
Yeah.
Out of love and concern for them.
Yeah.
But that self-righteousness comes in and says, well, hey, hold on there. We worked more than they did.
Yeah, shouldn't we have more?
So we deserve more.
Yeah.
But that's not the way it goes. It's being loving. The most important thing is love.
And this, a lot of the Old Testament prophecies about the kingdom of God bring out this thing of God's generosity. I had Isaiah 55. It says, "Ho, everyone that thirsteth, come ye to the waters, and he that hath no money, come ye, buy and eat. Yea, come, buy wine and milk without money and without price. Wherefore do ye spend money for that which is not bread, and your labor for that which satisfieth not? Hearken diligently unto me, and eat ye that which is good, and let your soul delight itself in fatness. Incline your ear, and come unto me. Hear, and your soul shall live. He's so generous with everyone.
Yes. Yeah, beautiful.
One more thing. We were just talking about the vineyard, the Jesus giving the wages, the vineyard owner. And actually, there's something in there kind of, I think, giving a lesson to his disciples, because in, I think it's Matthew 19, then answered Peter and said unto him, Behold, we have forsaken all and followed thee. What shall we have therefore? And Jesus said unto him, Verily I say unto you, that ye which have followed me, in the regeneration, when the Son of Man shall sit in the throne of his glory, ye also shall sit upon 12 thrones, judging the 12 tribes of Israel. And every one that hath forsaken houses, or brethren, or sisters, or fathers, or mother, or wife, or children, or land, for my name's sake, shall receive 100-fold, and shall inherit everlasting life. But many that are first shall be last, and the last shall be first. The kingdom of God doesn't quite always line up with what we're expecting. So what do you think? Should we call it quits?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm getting other thoughts. There's other things I need to do.
Okay.
But this is great, man.
Well, I'm so glad that David agreed to do this with me, and I think you came up with so much great stuff about this chapter, and I'm really, really thankful that you agreed to record this with me. We hadn't talked about this at all before starting. We read this chapter on our own over the past few days, and just recorded our talk. So, David, if we do this again, are there any chapters that you have a real obsession with?
Well, if we do John chapter 1, 1 through 15, that first chapter, that should take an hour, because there's so much in there.
Yeah.
And it's the presentation of Jesus and how he was man, but he was God.
Yeah.
Also, he was the Word, and I mean, to sort that out for people a little bit, because I know when it was sorted out for me, it really impressed me. It was a long time ago, but
yeah,
I think it'd be good to get that across to people.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I really look forward to hearing your thoughts on that chapter. I read that chapter so much, and it means so much to me, but I don't know how to even express it. So I'd love to.
It's all intertwined. It's like it's so much.
I'd love to have a talk with you about that one. That sounds great.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed this. Goodbye.